am so delighted to be here with you all today. And I'm going to be talking and picking up some of the themes that you've heard already about this afternoon or this morning, but I am going to be talking about through the lens of time, of course, right? Because for our happiness, time is the most critical resource. And I am confident in saying this, not just because of the many studies I've conducted pointing to this exact conclusion, but because of this basic fact. How we spend the hours of our days sums up to the years of our life. But then the question is, how should we spend the hours of our days to live a life that we want, a life that is fulfilling and joyful? This is not an easy question to answer. I'm a professor and I've spent my career studying happiness and time, yet for my own happiness, time keeps proving to be the single biggest barrier. I, like I'm sure many of you, suffer from time poverty, which is the acute feeling of having too much to do and not enough hours in the day to do it all, let alone to do any of it well, let alone to enjoy any of it along the way. Even if you haven't heard this term before, I suspect you know exactly what I'm talking about. Show of hands, how many of you agree with this statement? I never seem to have enough time to get everything done. A lot of us. And this is a serious issue because in my data with Maria Trupia, we have found that not only is time poverty prevalent, but the effects are negative and they are far-reaching. Our results show that people who are time poor feel greater stress. They exhibit less healthy behaviors. They sleep less, they exercise less, they feel less confident in being able to achieve what they set out to do. They feel less interpersonally connected and less happy. In a culture that prizes efficiency, getting more done in less time, and with their ever-present super smartphones that enable us to do any and everything all of the time, it is no wonder that we live in such a hurry. The frantic race of the day starts the second we wake up as we reach for our phones to turn off the alarm, and then the very next thing we do is we check all the texts, the emails, the alerts that have come in overnight, and we feel the pressure to start responding. And this sets the course for the rest of the day, reacting to those requests, those demands, those expectations. When I feel time poor, I find myself rushing through the hours of my day, not exercising, hurriedly responding to messages, trying to get as much done as quickly as possible before my next meeting, showing up to the events at my kids' school late and without the appropriate snacks, not to mention when I get there to those events or really any event, I'm often snippy and distracted because I am thinking about and concerned about all the other urgent tasks that are still waiting for me on my to-do list. I study time poverty and I intellectually know its effects, but I still get affected. I have a hard time figuring out what to say yes to, what to say no to. But this past fall, everything changed when I experienced something that abruptly shifted me out of this hyperspeed. On October 22nd, I was called to my mom's deathbed. I was at home in LA when I received the phone call that my mom was being taken to the hospital near her condo in San Diego, and it didn't sound good. So I packed my bag, cleared my schedule, made sure the kids were covered, and I got in my Jeep and I drove down. By the time I got to the hospital, the doctor let me know that this was going to be the end. When I was holding my mom's hand in those last hours of her life, I reflected on her years, the 76 of them, all the incredible experiences we shared, on her life overall. I also reflected on my time, not on the tasks of the day, But on my years, all those that were sort of behind me and all those that were ahead of me, I thought forward to the end of my life, and I was like, who will be next to me? Will I look back and feel happy and satisfied with the life that I had lived? I took on a broader perspective of time, thinking about my life overall. Those urgent tasks on my to-do list immediately seemed less urgent. I felt less pressed by what had seemed so pressing. In those weeks following, I canceled meetings, I ignored text chains and emails, I did not go to many of those school events. But what was interesting was that I didn't neglect all of my activities. There were some meetings that I did go to. I corresponded with certain friends and colleagues. I worked on projects that were really important to me. For my kids, I wholly and fully showed up, even if not on their school's campus. Taking this broader perspective of time quieted the noise. It gave me the confidence to spend on what was important. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised by this, because in some of my recent research with Hal Hirschfield, Joey Reef, Taylor Bergstrom, we found that people who take a broader perspective of time, those who think about their years rather than their hours, exhibit greater emotional well-being. Those who took a broader perspective of time report greater meaning in their life, greater satisfaction in their life. Not only that, in their days, they experience lower feelings of stress and more joy. Why? Well, there's probably multiple reasons driving this effect, but one that we found evidence for was that those who were thinking about their years spent their hours on activities that were important to them, rather than those that were merely urgent. My mom's passing had a similar effect on me, pushing me to spend my time on those things that were important to me. But not only that, it also clarified what was important to me. This event was obviously very sad and very hard, but it also had a positive effect on me and my relationship with time. Now for some good news. You don't need to lose a loved one to gain this perspective. In the course that I teach at UCLA's Anderson School of Management called Applying the Science of Happiness to Life Design, I assign my MBA students several exercises that push them to take on this broader perspective of time. And there's a couple exercises in particular that are incredibly helpful, and I describe them in Happier Hour, that clarify for each of us what matters so that we can spend our time accordingly. The first exercise is the eulogy exercise. And don't worry, you do not need to actually attend a funeral for this. But it does involve you projecting forward to the end of your life, and from that vantage point, reflecting back on your years. Imagining your funeral and taking the perspective of someone who would be giving your eulogy, like a friend or a family member. What would they say? What stories would they tell? What 2 to 3 words would they use to describe you? I gave the eulogy at my mom's funeral, and it was really interesting because the words that I centered on were the very same words that others were sharing in their memories of her. The first word was interesting. My mom was perpetually driven to do interesting things. She traveled the world, was constantly going to lectures, performances, museum exhibits, both because she was genuinely interested and she wanted to be interesting and have interesting things to talk about. Now that I'm a mom, I am struck by the bravery it must have taken her as a single parent to move across the globe with a 2nd grader and 4th grader to live in London simply because she wanted an interesting experience. And it was. The other word was celebration. My mom loved throwing parties. Everyone there at the funeral fondly remembered going to at least one of my mom's wonderful parties, whether a big festive Christmas party where she invited everyone she knew, or one of the smaller, beautifully designed dinner parties or luncheons. Even if it was just our family, she turned it into a party. Like for my daughter Lita's 7th birthday dinner, is just our family, but Mimi, which is what the grandkids called her, showed up to our house with bins of purple kitty decor and a cake that she'd had specially made out of cinnamon rolls, solely because Lita's love of all things kitty and purple and my simpler birthday tradition of eating cinnamon rolls for breakfast. So what my mom valued was being interesting and celebratory. That is who she was, and she spent her time to ensure that her life and my life was exactly that. When I project or imagine forward to the end of my life, I suspect people will associate me with happiness and describe me as happy, capturing what I've focused on throughout my career, as well as my annoyingly sunny disposition. Now, I want you guys to take a moment now to do this for yourselves. Imagine forward to the end of your life. Think about what people will say. What 2 to 3 words will they associate you with? What 2 to 3 words do you hope people will use to describe you? And I would encourage you to write those words down, because those words, that's what matters to you, and that can guide how you spend your time. So this eulogy exercise is really helpful in clarifying your values. It nudges you to take on that broader perspective of time. Another exercise that is very helpful in taking a broader perspective of time is the 5 whys exercise. This helps you identify your purpose. Now, identifying your purpose can sound like a lofty and intimidating undertaking, but fortunately this exercise makes it more tractable and much less daunting. So in this exercise, what you do is, given what you do for work or how you spend the majority of your time, you ask yourself, why do you do that? And then you ask this question 5 times. To give you a sense of how this works, I'll share my 5 whys exercise. So I am a business school professor. Why do I do that? Well, my job description is to do research, teach, and I have to do administrative service. Why is that important? Well, borrowing from what I heard one of my colleagues say in describing our work as academics, it's to create and disseminate knowledge. But why that? Well, I want people to be smarter. But more honestly, what I really care about is people being smarter about their happiness. I want to help people make decisions that will allow them to feel happier in their days and about their lives. So answering this 5th layer of why revealed to me my purpose. It showed me that it wasn't just 1 research, 2 teaching, 3 service. What more specifically and truly drives me in the work that I do is to create knowledge about what makes people happy, to disseminate knowledge about what makes people happy, and to cultivate happiness in my community. This is game-changing because when you know your purpose, what drives you, it helps offset time poverty because it's a really effective filter for what to say yes to, and more helpfully, what to say no to. Also, because you know why you're doing the work that you're doing, it makes those unfun pieces of your work more meaningful and therefore less onerous. And even more wonderfully, it makes it so that when you are spending your time in a way that is in line with your purpose, it is truly joyful. This perspective and clarity is what I gained when my mom passed. It guided me on how to spend my time. Yes, what to say no to, but also what to say yes to. If you recall, I said that there were some meetings that I attended in those weeks following. I did attend the women faculty lunch that I had already planned because I viewed it as an investment in the connection and happiness of my professional community. I still did the interview for the We Can Do Hard Things podcast because it was a meaningful opportunity to disseminate knowledge about what makes people happier to a much broader community. And in terms of cultivating the happiness in my community, of course, for me, the one that matters most is my family. There were some of those events at the school that I did not show up to. But for the ones that mattered, I absolutely showed up. I was there, fully present. My son's 12th birthday was just 2 weeks after my mom's death. And he had previously shared that he wanted to go tubing or take his friends tubing. My husband had already researched about renting a boat, and I had had these grand plans of finding a perfect lunch spot and ordering all the kids cute personalized towels. But this perspective gave me the clarity and confidence to home in on what ultimately mattered. And following Mimi's legacy, we did celebrate. But instead of going to a fancy restaurant, with the kids on the way to the lake, we stopped at Jersey Mike's, picked up sub sandwiches and bags of Doritos. And even though it was only 6 kids and not 36, and there weren't any cute or clever party favors, the day was truly joyful, and my Leo declared it his happiest birthday yet. And so, wait. Thank you. This touches back to what I said at the very beginning. Yes, how we spend the hours of our days sum up to the years of our lives. But what I hope you have learned with me today is that how we spend our hours should be informed by our years and what we want them to look like. Thank you.